But I think that the more subtle dimension of this, which is important, has to do with the fact that there's a deeper there's a deeper dimension of our own experience and of our own selves that if we want to discover, we have to there's a degree of giving up control and a willingness not to already know, and a willingness not to weigh and measure that is profound. And I just think it's important to kind of really consider, what we have to consider, the significance of of the science of how actually this works. So when you really consider what's involved, I can say it's very profound. So I keep saying, my teacher said to me, I'm glad you found a friend you're never going to be able to see. So it's the same thing. If you're not willing to kind of give up all strategies, weighing and measuring, always trying to figure out where you are in relationship to everything else, relationship to time, history, present, and everything else, then you're never going to see that friend. So there's a degree of a willingness to kind of, you have to transition into a completely different relationship to your experience. It has nothing to do with any other relationship we ever have to our experience in any moment in relationship to anything. So there's a very profound and radical shift of orientation that's much bigger than most people imagine that it is. And if there's a technique involved, it's going to be a lot easier, because then all you have to do is just focus on doing the technique. But if there's no techniques involved, if you're just dealing directly with consciousness itself, then there's a lot more involved. You have to really give a lot more of yourself to it. Right?
Definitely, yeah.
Uh-huh. I mean, this stuff amazes me every day. It's ever new to me.
Yeah. It's fantastic just to have the opportunity. I was appreciating a lot what you have been saying about this is the only opportunity where you can really do this. Because I've always known that the meditation is it's the only time that you actually have no relationship to thought. But
if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's the only time we give it a shot.
Yeah.
Right.
But I've just been, I think, taking advantage of this opportunity in a way that I hadn't before, of just actually seeing what a privilege it is to actually be able to.
It's the only real vacation you're ever going to have.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What did I say on the first day? I said something like, it's the only, oh, you're right. This is the only kind of experience in which all your problems will generally disappear.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So that's the whole point of going on a vacation? Isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think if that's true, and I believe it is true, it's something worth considering. This is the only kind of experience I'm going to have on my problems with this. Is that really true? Yes. So how do we know? How do we know how profound the effect of the actual time we're spending having no relationship with the content of consciousness? How do we know how profound the effect of doing that is?
On the choices we make?
Well, I mean, is there a greater degree of lightness of being in our experience? Are we more free? Right?
Yeah.
Is there more spiritual self-confidence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's just kind of really starting to begin. Meditating more has built a lot more spiritual self-confidence over the past year, but I think in general it's kind of brought a lightness of being along with it. But I'm just just seeing now that there's so much further to go.
So what do you have to say about the issue of no relationships to the content of consciousness? You have no idea what I'm asking you, right?
Yeah, I know.
Why do I feel like I'm... So when I say, what's the result if we're assuming no relationship to the content of consciousness? What's the result that we want to see outside the context of doing what we're doing here?
Lightness of being.
Right, but there would be more of a steadiness.
Mm. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because no relationship means no relationship to the highs and the lows.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
No relationship to the highs. That's a lot to ask from someone. No relationship to the highs and the lows, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a lot to ask for most
yeah.
people? What?
Definitely, yeah. No, there's a real austerity to it, and
Profound
maturity as
Profound.
well. That's
what?
There's a real maturity to it.
Spiritual
as well.
maturity.
Yeah, that's something.
Spiritual maturity.
Something I've been finding on this retreat because I've done 3.
So what's the sign of spiritual maturity in a human being? Shift in values. Spiritual maturity shows you can see their values have shifted. Right?
Yeah. And and it seems like there's also as spiritual maturity grows, there's a steadiness as well that comes with it.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, I just kind of changed the subject at the last minute, but the thing I was focusing on had to do with it's the transcending opposites. So the opposites in this case would be the extreme highs or the extreme lows. Right?
Yeah.
That when do we lose our balance?
When we get
Extreme highs or extreme lows. When some people get really high, they usually lose their balance. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
And how do we lose our balance? Ecstatic overconfidence. Mm-hmm. Stupidity, narcissism, overconfidence. And then if there's very extreme lows, what happens? We lose all our confidence. We get crushed.
Yeah, you lose faith, you lose conviction.
Right, we get crushed. All that. So, if you have no relationship to the content of consciousness, in this case to all the highs and all the lows, then you're going to see much greater steadiness. Right?
Yeah. Definitely. And yeah, there's a kind of spiritual strength that comes with it.
Well, the spiritual strength would just come from the knowledge of what's more true than the relative shifting and swaying of changing states and experiences.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But this other issue here of the spiritual maturity it has to do with the shift of our values. Right? So, for example, when you experience deeper states of consciousness, deeper dimensions of your own self, certain things become more important to you that weren't important before you had those kinds of experiences. And things that were important to you before you had those kinds of experiences then become less important. Right?
Yeah.
So then someone's values are going to be shifting.